athlete. I started running in 2008. Ran my first marathon while pregnant with my first son. So I tell him he's run a marathon even before being born. I'm also a wine student. Yes, you can combine your athleticism and your love for wine. I'm studying diploma for my wines. And across all these different aspects of my life, I'm a creature of habit. So as mentioned, I recently finished the World Marathon Challenge. Actually, it's a decade-long project of mine that finally happened this year. What is the World Marathon Challenge? It's a run, a series of runs that will take you from Antarctica all the way to Miami. So it's running 7 marathons in 7 days across 7 continents. So I did that in January. It got to my mind in 2015. When I first learned about it, I said, in my lifetime, I will eventually do it. I didn't know when, but I said, no matter when it's going to happen, I'll try to get there somehow. So it finally happened, and it was quite a feat, the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life. Before that, I also run across the globe. No, I ran the world's biggest marathons, the marathon majors, and it started, this is my first marathon, by the way, the one in the middle. I was 16 weeks pregnant at this time. But my doctor gave me a clean bill of health, so I went ahead. So I ran marathons. I used to do triathlons. I signed up before I learned how to swim and bike. I was much younger then, but I realized my love is really for running, and I stopped everything else. So these seem to be very big things, no? Very audacious undertakings, but it really started with the little habits. And I've always been a creature of habit. I mentioned that. No? I knew that intuitively, no, that doing things repeatedly is good for you. But during the pandemic, I got a bit more curious, and so I went through this course called the Tiny Habits Academy. It's run by the esteemed Professor BJ Fogg. So he's credited as the proponent, no, of Tiny Habits, and I encourage everyone to read this book. So I'll share with you some of the habit principles I have learned through the Tiny Habits Academy. So keep it tiny, as in really, really tiny. And why is it important to keep it tiny? It's because our motivation shift, our hormones shift, as I feel it, and our willpower, our context change. We travel, we get busy. So it's important that we are not dependent on our energy and on our willpower to do these habits. So the tiniest versions become no-brainer activities that we do. So I'll unpack that as we move along. So keep it absolutely tiny, the tiniest possible version of it. So we follow a simple formula which we call A plus B plus C. No? This is the recipe for the tiny habits. It goes after I blank, and the blank is the anchor moment. The anchor moment is an existing routine or activity that you already do every single day without thinking about it. An existing routine in your life that will remind you to do the tiny behavior, which is the B. No? After I blank, I will blank, which is the tiny behavior. This tiny behavior is the new habit you want, but you scale it back to be super duper tiny and super easy, not dependent on whether you feel like it or you have the energy for it. And then the last thing you do, which is actually the most important part in this equation, is the celebration part. So after I blank, I will celebrate. And the celebration is important because it wires your brain. It gives you that positive energy, a positive feeling that allows you to keep doing and doing that activity over and over again. So to wire the habit into my brain, I will immediately do this, which is a celebration. Something you do to create a positive feeling inside of yourself, like a feeling of shine, like this really beautiful sensation that courses through your body is a form of celebration. And you can find your own version of that. In my case, the way I celebrate a habit that I did is to do this motion. This motion reminds me of my finish line in marathons. And every single time I finish a marathon, I do this with tears streaming down my face. Of course, I don't do that every single day, but you get the drift. No? Na, it's a very strong sensation that courses through your body, triggers something in your brain, and that reminds you to keep repeating and repeating the activity. So this is a sample one, and I personally do this still every day. They call it the Maui habit. I'm not sure why it's called that way. So it goes, after I wake up and put my feet on the floor, I will say, it's going to be a great day. And then I do my celebratory, like fist up, fist bump, and it wires the habit immediately. So I've been doing this for the past how many days. So even as the day gets to shift different ways, no, at least I started feeling that it's a wonderful day. So that's very simple. Anyone can do this. Maybe at this point, I encourage you to start thinking about what is it that you are already doing each day, and what is it that you'd like to do more of, and to see how you could tie it together. And also start thinking about what is my celebratory movement. So we unpack a little bit. Now, what are the anatomy of the tiny habits? As I said, A is the anchor moments. It reminds you to do the tiny behavior. B is the tiniest behavior to be done immediately, very important, after the anchor moment. And then also immediately after is you do your celebration. So anchor moments are something you're already doing. It must be done in the same location, in the same frequency, same time as your behavior, and maybe of the same theme. So for instance, everyone brushes their teeth every day, every morning, right? So that could be your anchor moment. And then if you'd like to floss more, what you do is you can just say, after I put down my toothbrush, I will immediately get the floss and floss one tooth. Don't even attempt to floss all your teeth, right? So that's what is the tiniest version of that, is to take the floss and floss one tooth. And it's the same theme, no? It's oral health. And so you can think about the other anchor moments that you do in your life that you can string along with a new behavior of a similar theme. Tiny behavior, make it sure it's super, super tiny, that is a no-brainer, and just do the first step. Sometimes you feel that you distilled, or at least like whittled down, an activity or a behavior to its tiniest version, but still it's difficult to do. So you'll still have to think about what is a tinier version of that. So for instance, if you'd like to start running and your behavior, your anchor moment would be, as soon as I put down my morning coffee cup, I will go out for a run. But the going out for a run is still a series of steps, right? So what is the tiniest version of that? So after I put down my coffee cup, I will get my running shoe. And that could be just the tiniest version of that action of running that you can get started with. And then once you have your shoe, so you're already shoed up, then you might as well go for a walk and then for a run. So it kind of just progresses from there. But you celebrate just the act of putting on your shoe. Sometimes just getting to that point is already hard, right? Especially if we're going through a lot of things. So scale back to until it gets to be the tiniest version of that action. And then celebrate. Find a celebration action that's very personal. It can be very silly.